Welcome to another solo episode of the Greater WAAAGH. This is a video series where we answer the questions left by you, the viewers. If you have a question for us, comment down below, put question in front of your question because we get to those questions first. Normally it's me and the Sound Alchemist, but he is not here this week. He will return next week, hopefully. This question comes from J. George. He asks, how would the other Primarchs react to the Primaris Marines? That's a really good question because the rumor has been pretty consistent since Guilliman first came out that we are going to get a new Primarch, and it's either going to be Sanguinius, or it's going to be the Lion, or it's going to be Jagatai Khan. And the big thing is that the Primaris Marines were created during the Ultima founding. It was something that was orchestrated by Guilliman and Belisarius Cawl, so the Adeptus Mechanicus, and it's a 10,000-year project. So GW can take this two different ways. This is the two ways that I am more than likely, or that we are more than likely going to see. The first one is that Guilliman told his Primarch brethren that there was going to be an Ultima founding and that the Primaris Marines were going to become better, or they were going to be the better versions of the old Marines because he knew about the genetic flaws and all that kind of stuff within the other legions. So like if it doesn't matter if it's Sanguinius or if it doesn't matter if it's like Lehmanruss coming back, what would end up happening in that situation is that Primarch would understand that, oh yeah, these guys were something that was in the pipeline. We were going to create these guys. Now I can use them alongside the old Marines, and we can embark in our, crusades that might happen. And yeah, they just keep going. Nothing too major happening. Now, the other way that things can turn out is that the new returning Primarch is not comfortable with the Primaris Marines. He is more interested in dealing with the old Marines because those are the ones that were there during the Great Crusade. Those are part of their legions, kind of. And even though they have genetic flaws, they are still something that they fought with. And in that situation, I could see that returning Primarch kind of pushing the Primaris Marines off to the side, only going on crusades with the old Marines, and it would turn into a situation very similar to Guilliman and his Codex Astartes. So after the Horus Heresy, it was Guilliman who was like, hey, let's take our legions and break them up into chapters. We can't have Legion strong Space Marine forces because Horus had that and catastrophe struck. So he basically was the one who coordinated the dismembering or the disconnection of all of the military branches. So even the Imperial Navy was separate from the Imperial Guard, which was the Imperial Army back then. And then we had the Second Founding and all that kind of stuff. But before that, there was a lot of rebuttal from the other Primarchs. So the Loyalist Primarchs didn't want their legions to be broken up. It took a lot of diplomacy from Guilliman and all the other Primarchs to finally say, yes, you know what, let's break up the legions into chapters, and I see that happening with the Primaris Marines, where the Loyalist Primarch that returns is like, no, I don't want anything to do with these guys, but then eventually either some type of giant catastrophe happens or some big bad boss comes out, and that Primarch, who is reluctant to accept the Primaris Marines, has no choice but to accept them. And all of this will happen in one storyline, kind of like when Guilliman returned. The second assault on Terra happened all almost at once. It was almost like Guilliman is out, the story of the assault on Terra is out, and so is the Plague Wars. And they basically came out around the same time. So it would be a similar situation like that, where we get this story of the new Primarch accepting the Primaris Marines because they kind of saved the day type of thing. And there is another possibility, and that is that the returning Primarch somehow creates tension between the Imperium and a civil war breaks out. The problem with that concept is that it's probably, or even though it would be cool for Imperium players, it kind of pushes everybody else out. And I think what GW is trying to do is whenever they do something big like bringing back a Primarch, they want to tie it into some either Xenos faction, or they want to tie it into some Chaos faction, kind of like what they did with the Eldar and the birth of the god Ennead. That was connected to Guilliman. So an internal struggle between the Imperium would probably not sell models, or would only sell Imperium models, and that's not what GW wants. They want to spread the desire, or like the need, with other factions. So we would probably see some type of catastrophe, like I said, and not a civil war. But yeah, those are my two ideas. We'll see what happens, and we'll see if the Primarchs even do come back. I would like to see Lehmanruss come back, just because he just seems kind of cool. Space Wolves, I feel like, have been getting ignored. Even when God School came out, we had Black Mane, but it was just one model, and it wasn't really all that badass. But yeah, good question though. Next question comes from Magic Eye. We know that the Imperium has teamed up with Xenos to deal with greater threats. Have Xenos teamed up with other Xenos to deal with greater threats? And if so, what Xeno teams up with one another? So I think I've answered this before, and the answer is yes. We see usually the big bad guys are the Tyranids, and then sometimes the Necrons, because the Necrons just recently, in the new lore, they're very diplomatic. So you could even see, like, maybe even the Tau Empire dealing with the Necrons. But for the most part, what always ends up happening is if two Xeno factions interact with each other, which has happened in the Codex with, like, the Orcs fighting alongside the Tau. Unfortunately, the Orcs twist everything up, or at the end of the battle, the Orcs use the same guns that the Tau Empire gave them to attack the Tau. And then I think there was the Tau getting screwed over by the Dark Eldar, who were fighting the Tyranids. So they fought alongside each other, but then at the end, the Dark Eldar just took the Tau as slaves. So I know there's a lot of talk of, like, the Imperium being xenophobic, but other races are just as xenophobic. So that's what we see. And if you are trying to, like, coordinate some type of alliance between, like, different factions, Xeno factions, there's ways to do it. The toughest ones is going to be the Tyranids, but the solution to that is, because Tyranids are animalistic, they might see, like, the actual, like, let's say they're going to team up with the Orcs. They don't see the Orcs as the biggest threat. They might see Chaos as the bigger threat. So they're going to deal with the top dog first, and then they'll deal with the other ones. And it's not so much an alliance. It'll just be like the Tyranid creature, or the hive mind, is basically just ignoring the faction that is fighting right next to them. But yeah, good question. This next question comes from, I think I've answered that one before. Yes, Echambi. Do you ever play other 40k tabletop games like Deathwatch, Titanicus, Blackstone Fortress, etc.? No, we only play the tabletop, the 40k tabletop. We started playing Crusade, which is different than just regular points, because you're dealing with power level instead of point values. And it's actually a lot of fun, but at the end of the day, it's still the same type of game. We've never tried Blackstone Fortress. It seems interesting. Never played Necromunda. Also seems interesting. We did play Kill Team for a little bit, but Kill Team is kind of the same as regular 40k, just in a smaller scale. Which with the other box sets, I feel like they're different. If you guys have experienced playing all these different, like, box games that GW has come out with, I would love to hear what you guys think is the best one. So outside of the 40k traditional core tabletop, what other games do you guys enjoy? Yeah, let me know. This next question comes from Hell's Crema. If there is a nipple in the thumbnail, does OMS get a strike? Sometimes, yeah. I think it's going to be really bad when they find our OnlyFans, because we're just going to get banned from the entire website. We'll see. Next question. This question comes from Thomas Taylor. Is the Lehmanruss tank named after the Space Wolf's leader, Lehmanruss? I don't think so. I think it's the other way around, but I'm not too sure. I need to read up on the lore of the Lehmanruss, which I will do eventually. Imperial Guard is one of those factions that, when we read the lore, it's really just talking about regiments. We don't get into detail about, like, the other things. But we will. I'll talk about tanks and try to make them fun. It's kind of hard to make tank lore videos fun when you yourself don't play that kind of stuff, so you don't really know what what kind of things you guys want me to talk about. The armaments, the creation. What is the most important part of a tank? I would love to know. Just comment down below if you are one of those like tank lovers, because there's a lot of like separatist games or third-party games that deal with like tank warfare and things like that. But yeah. All right, this next question. That's a long one. This one comes from NonSink. Are you sure that the Emperor is not pretending to be helpless skeleton and waiting for something? From what we know, he is very good at biding his time. Maybe by sacrificing Psykers, he is powering up, preparing to use the Golden Throne remotely, allowing him some action time. Yeah, so there is a theory, or I have a theory, that the Emperor of Mankind might have seen that the only way to succeed against the Chaos Gods is for him to become a Chaos God, and that is what's happening right now. So you should check out our 40 facts on the Emperor turning into a god. That kind of goes through the process of how the old ones might have become the Eldar gods. And if that's true, and the Emperor knew about that, then he probably is trying to coordinate his own ascension to godlyhood by having all these people worship him as a god. So it's actually the Lectitio Divinatis that was somehow orchestrated by the Emperor from the past. No, the Emperor who becomes a god, but because you're a god of chaos or the Immaterium, there is no past and present. They're just, everything is everywhere. It could be him planting the seed into Lorgar's mind to create the Lectitio Divinatis, which is the worship of the Emperor. So you'll have two Emperors running kind of at the same time or in the same universe, where you have the God Emperor dealing with the actual physical Emperor of the Great Crusade and the Horus Heresy, and the actions of the God Emperor still influence the old standard Emperor that's sitting on the Golden Throne and that fought in the Great Crusade. So to kind of unconvolute all that, if that's a word, yeah, it could just be like a big plan. He is dying. Like, his body is deteriorating. That's not a lie. We see it in the fan art. But it could have been a plan for him to become a god. And if that's the case, then hopefully he succeeds. And I'm pretty sure that the 20th Legion, the Alpha Legion, is somehow tied into that whole thing. It would be a good theory video, though, to go in depth into it. But like I said, check out our 40 facts on is the Emperor becoming a god. That explains a little bit more. This next question comes from Grant Patterson. Based on your recent video about the Lost Legions, I understand that the Emperor is not wanting others to know, but why didn't Chaos tell Horus, or why didn't the blocks not fall with his Chaos boosts? Is it possible Chaos themselves were scared of what the two became? See, I don't know what you're talking about with the Lost Legions. Oh, okay. So what you're asking is, I understand that the Emperor's not wanting others to know, but why didn't Chaos tell Horus, or why didn't the blocks not fall with the Chaos boosts? I don't know how you're tying the Lost Legions in with Chaos. I think what you're saying is, because the story of the Lost Legions is or the Lost Primarchs, is that one was damned and one was lost. So damned means chaotic. So if there was a Chaos Legion or a Chaos Primarch before the traitors happened, then that must mean that the gods should have told Horus. But it could be a ace in the hole type of situation, where like the Chaos gods don't want to let the Emperor know, or not the Emperor, don't want to let Horus know about the lost Primarch or the damned Primarch, because eventually he's going to have a role to play in the greater game. So that might be a possibility. And your second part is, why didn't... Oh, were the other Chaos Gods scared of the legions? No, I think they would probably be pawns. They would be treated like Horus. Horus was treated like a pawn by the Chaos Gods, so I think in that way it would kind of fall in the same way. Yeah, check out our 40 facts on the Lost Primarchs to learn a little bit more about their whole theories, because there's a couple theories as to what they truly are. In my opinion, what I hope does happen is that we'd never find out what the Lost Legions were, and that's just kind of like given to us to like plot and scheme and to create our own homebrew Primarchs. At least that's what I hope ends up happening. This next question comes from Johnny S. Who is the most powerful trader Primarch? That's tough to say. It's definitely not Mortarion. I think he gets his ass beat a lot. Right now, I think it's a tie between a three-way tie between the Alfarius, the Lorgar, and maybe Perturabo. I feel like those three are the most like cunning out of the Lost Primarchs. So one of them would be one of the stronger ones. Yeah, probably Lorgar. But I'm not sure. And I don't think we're ever really going to see them all together at once again. We'll see what happens. This next question comes from Iridor1982. Do you think that if Caw had the potential to re-engineer Necron tech to create something similar to the Cadian pylons? Yeah, so that's what the whole story is with the Startide Nexus and Blackstone. So Blackstone is the material that is used to create the pylons, and the whole process of the Adeptus Mechanicus trying to uncover this Blackstone was so that they can create their own pylons, probably around Terra, or to reinforce certain like warp tears and stuff like that. And that is the whole storyline with there was a box set that came out where it was the Necrons versus the Skitarii. That goes a little bit more in depth. We created a 40 facts video on it, so if you want to check out the 40 facts on the Necrons versus the Skitarii, or the Adeptus Mechanicus versus the Necrons, I talk about Blackstone and stuff like that. Also check out our 40 facts on the Blackstone. That explains the re-engineering Necron technology to create pylons. So humanity is already doing it. The problem is that the Necrons have been awakened to a level now where they're screwing things up. Well, they're not being passive anymore. They're actually going out and interacting with like entire sectors, and that is what the Startide Nexus is. It is basically a subsector that is being blanketed by this thing that cuts everything inside of the subsector from the immaterium. So you have all of these humans who are disconnected, and if you are disconnected from the immaterium, this kind of ties into a question that was asked sometime a couple days ago, but basically it was saying like, what are souls in 40k? The soul is the connection to the immaterium. So if you have this Startide Nexus cutting the connection between human and the immaterium, you have an empty husk because the soul has been taken away. So yeah, it's already happening. It's already being studied, and yeah, we'll see what happens. Hopefully, they continue to progress the story, and it doesn't become like one of the Eldar gods where Inyad is talked about, but that's it. We don't really hear much about him or her anymore. This will be the last question, and this one's gonna be by. I've answered that one before. We'll do Twist Jane. In the latest artwork in the 9th edition, there is a Xenos race that I have never seen before. One looks like a walking tree, one like a giant gene stealer mech, and one slime humanoid with a giant mech ball head. Any idea what kind of Xeno races they are? No idea, but I bet you we're going to find out later on in like different box games. So either Blackstone Fortress, what's that other one that... So Blackstone Fortress, Necromunda, or maybe Kill Team. But yeah, we'll figure out what they are, and hopefully GW does something with them, because sometimes it is just artwork that's supposed to depict mutants and xenos, and it's supposed to show a grander scale than what we see on the tabletops. So yeah. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and if you guys have more questions, comment down below. We'll be back to answer them next week. Thank you guys so much for listening, and I'll talk to you tomorrow. This was Gershwin with One Mind Syndicate, signing out.
Always used to put my freedom first in any situation.